The heat of May in Phoenix was stifling. That May 22, 2008, the jacarandas bloomed purple along the streets of the San Juan neighborhood. Children ran across dusty yards while their mothers prepared lunch. At house number 847 on Hidalgo Street, Mary Reyes was finishing the braids in her 6-year-old daughter's shiny black hair. "Sit still, sweetheart," Mary whispered her daughter. Emily was a lively child with wide, expressive eyes, always smiling and humming the songs she learned in her elementary school. That day she wore her favorite blue dress, the one with little. The Reyes family's routine was simple, but full of love. Daniel, the father, worked as a mechanic in a shop nearby while Mary took care of the home and looked after Emily and her younger brother, 4-year-old Noah. They lived modestly in a 2-bedroom house with a small backyard, where Mary grew up that morning like so many others. Emily ate her breakfast of quesadillas with refried beans while watching cartoons on the small TV in the living room. Her laughter echoed through the house as Tom chased Jerry across the screen, and Mary couldn't help but smile as she washed the dishes at the sink. From the kitchen window she could see into the neighbor's yard. Mr. Robert Harris, a 60-year-old man who had Mr. Harris was always, "Yes, sweetie." Emily ran around Emily. She called, thinking. There was no answer. Mary searched the entire house. The living room. No. Of Mary canvassed the whole block by 12:30. Mary called Daniel. "Daniel, I can. What do you do?" She was in the yard. Daniel dropped at 3 p.m., hearts breaking, hands trembling. "Mary and D. When was the last time you, around 11 this month?" And Daniel shook his head. The officer pressed with routine questions. "Emily's." "We'll start the search right away," Malone assured them. Mary pulled from her purse a picture taken 2 weeks earlier at the school's Mother's Day celebration. That. First night was the longest. Neighbors began to gather. Mrs. Alvarez brought who? In the days that followed, the search intensified. Police combed vacant lots. D-tips flooded in. Someone claimed to see a Mary spent her days wandering. Weeks turned-eye grief rooted itself in meanwhile. Little Noah grew up in the neighbors who once showed solidarity slowly drifted back to Mr. Harris. The neighbor had been especially supportive at first. He often the years dragged on. Every birthday for Emily became a day of mourning. Mary baked a cake, lit the candles for the age her daughter would have been, and sat in front of the empty room to sing "Happy Birthday" through her tears. By 2013, 5 years after the disappearance, Noah was 9 and had grown into an introverted child whose teachers worried about him. He had learned to live in silence, watching his parents waste away day after day in a search that seemed endless. Daniel lost several jobs because of his drinking. Periods of sobriety were followed by weeks-long binges. Mary had tried bringing him to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, but Daniel always quit after a few sessions. "What's the point of staying sober if our daughter is still missing?" he would shout during the arguments that had become routine. "At least when I drink, I don't feel this pain killing me inside." Mary, for her part, found refuge in faith and in support groups for parents of missing children. Every Thursday she attended meetings in downtown Phoenix, where she met other women who shared her grief. There she met Letitia, whose 15-year-old son had vanished on his way to school 2 years earlier, and Patricia, who had been searching for her teenage daughter for 8 years. At those gatherings, Mary learned about legal procedures, nonprofit organizations that help families, and the most effective search techniques. She became an unwilling expert on disappearances, able to recite statistics from memory and name dozens of children who had gone missing in Arizona over the past decade. "Hope is the only thing that keeps us alive," Letitia would tell her at one meeting, holding a worn photograph of her son. "The day we stop hoping, we die inside." But hope grew harder to keep. Mary's nights became endless, filled with nightmares of Emily calling to her from dark, distant places. By day, every little girl in the street made her look twice. Every child's laugh made her turn, hoping to find those wide, expressive eyes she missed so much. The family's finances declined. With Daniel working sporadically and Mary devoting all her time to searching, money barely covered the basics. They sold furniture and even considered moving to a smaller house. Mary refused. "What if Emily comes back and doesn't find us?" she argued when Daniel suggested it. "This is her home. Her things are here. This is where she'll look for us." The San Juan neighborhood changed too. Some families moved away. New neighbors arrived who didn't know Emily's story. and gradually the case drifted from public attention. Only the oldest residents still remembered and would occasionally ask Mary if there was any news. Mr. Harris aged noticeably over those years. His hair went white and his knees ached. He quit his night shift job and lived off a small pension, but his support never waned. He still asked after Emily and helped Daniel with odd jobs when Daniel was sober. "Mr. Harris has been like an angel to us," Mary told her support group friends. "He's always checking in. He's one of the few who hasn't forgotten Emily." In 2015, 7 years after the disappearance, a new commander took over at the local sheriff's department. Commander Edward Ruiz decided to review cold cases, including Emily Reyes's. He summoned Mary and Daniel for a new interview and promised to reopen the investigation using more modern methods. "We're going to digitize the entire file and cross-check it with national databases," Ruiz told them. "We'll re-interview neighbors in case someone remembers a detail that didn't seem important before." The news rekindled Mary's hope. Finally, she felt someone in the system was taking Emily's case seriously. In the weeks that followed, officers returned to the neighborhood to conduct fresh interviews. They spoke to Mrs. Alvarez, to Mr. Jimenez at the corner store, to the families on nearby blocks, and to Mr. Harris. "Do you recall anything unusual that morning, May 22, 2008? Detective Morales asked Harris as he reviewed his old notes. "Honestly, Detective, it's been so many years," Harris said slowly. "I was working in my garden that morning. It got so hot I lay down to rest. I didn't hear or see anything strange until the commotion later in the day." The new interviews produced no significant leads. Neighbors gave the same accounts they had years ago, and no new witnesses or clues emerged. Still, Commander Ruiz kept his promise. The file was digitized and uploaded to national systems. Meanwhile, Noah turned 12 and finished 6th grade. Bright but painfully shy, he had learned to be invisible so as not to add to his parents' burdens. His grades were excellent, but teachers noticed he never joined group activities. At recess, he preferred to read alone rather than play. The school counselor, Ms. Guadalupe, urged Mary to seek psychological support for Noah. "Your son needs therapy," she said at one meeting. "This family trauma affects him deeply at a crucial age. He can't keep carrying this pain without help." Mary knew the counselor was right, but money was scarce and public services had long waiting lists. Worse, she felt that any emotional energy not devoted to finding Emily would be a betrayal of her missing daughter. In 2016, something briefly altered the family's routine. Mary got a call from a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. called Finding Justice, which had spotted Emily's digitized case in national databases. "Mrs. Reyes, we've reviewed your daughter's file and believe we can help," said Fernanda Castillo, the coordinator, over the phone. "We have national media contacts and can give the case greater exposure." Mary leapt at the chance. She traveled to D.C. to record TV and radio interviews. Emily's 6-year-old photo and an age-progressed image showing how she might look at 15 were broadcast nationwide. For a time, dozens of tips poured in. Alleged sightings in San Diego, Miami, Phoenix suburbs, and even reports from Texas and New Mexico. Every call was a sliver of hope. Mary chased each lead herself, no matter how distant. Daniel grew skeptical with the passing years. The repeated false alarms had dulled his ability to hope, and he preferred to stay out of the media-driven searches. "They're just giving us false hope," he told Mary after she returned from yet another fruitless trip. "It's been 8 years, Mary. If she were alive, we would have had real news." Those words ignited terrible fights that further hollowed their marriage. Mary accused Daniel of losing faith and betraying Emily's memory. Daniel said Mary was destroying what remained of their family, chasing ghosts. "Noah needs us," Daniel screamed in one argument. "Our living child needs us, but you're so obsessed with Emily you don't see Noah dying of loneliness." Mary couldn't stop. Every day without searching felt like a day lost. She became adept at spotting faces in crowds, able to pick out from a distance any girl who bore the faintest resemblance to Emily. In 2017, 9 years after the disappearance, Noah started middle school at 13, a boy raised under the shadow of a vanished sister, constantly compared in his parents' hearts to the idealized memory of someone he barely remembered. Through those years, Mr. Harris grew ever closer to the family. He sometimes invited Noah over to teach him basic repairs or to watch soccer matches together. The elderly man, now in his 70s and walking with a cane because of arthritis, had become a father figure to Noah, especially during the days when Daniel vanished into drinking binges. "Mr. Harris is so good with Noah," Mary told her sister on the phone. "I think he's the only steady presence my son has had all these years." By 2018, the search had consumed Mary completely. She was 42 but looked far older from a decade of grief. Her hair had gone prematurely gray and she had grown thin, worrying relatives. Her marriage to Daniel lay in ruins. They slept apart and spoke only to argue about money or Noah. Daniel had found work as a mechanic across town, giving him long hours away from home and a way to avoid the conversations that sank him into deep despair. Noah, now 14, had developed a complicated personality. At school, he was the model student. At home, he grew increasingly rebellious and distant. One afternoon, while helping Mr. Harris repair a blender in the backyard, he confided, "I can't take this anymore. My mom is losing her mind. She talks about Emily all day like she's coming back tomorrow, and my dad is always drunk. Sometimes I wish it had been me who disappeared." Mr. Harris listened with patience, having witnessed the family's slow unraveling and developed a genuine concern for the boy he'd come to see as family. "Your mom is sick with grief," Mr. Harris explained in a calm voice as he adjusted the blender blades. "When a mother loses a child, something in her heart breaks for good. Don't judge her too harshly, Noah. She loves you, but she's lost inside her pain." "But I'm her child too," Noah answered, his voice cracking. "I need her to see me, to care about me. Sometimes I feel invisible in my own house." Mr. Harris laid his wrinkled hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're not invisible, son. I see you, and I know you're a good kid who deserves to be happy. Things will get better. You'll see." These talks had become frequent between Mr. Harris and Noah. The elderly neighbor had become the only adult in the teenager's life who truly listened and cared about his feelings. Noah began spending more time at Mr. Harris's place than at home, especially on weekends. Mr. Harris's house was small but welcoming, with old yet well-kept furniture and walls lined with photos of his late wife, Hope, who had died of cancer in 2005. He kept everything spotless and always had cookies and soda ready when Noah visited. "You remind me a lot of myself at your age," Mr. Harris would say as they watched Phoenix Rising matches on his small TV. "I felt misunderstood too. Sometimes adults are so tied up in their own problems they forget that young people hurt as well." In 2019, 11 years after Emily's disappearance, Mary made a decision that stunned everyone. She quit her part-time housekeeping job with an affluent family to devote herself entirely to the search for her daughter. She had worked for years to help cover expenses, but every hour spent cleaning someone else's home felt like an hour stolen from finding Emily. "You're out of your mind," Daniel yelled when he found out. "How are we going to pay for power, water, food?" "Noah needs school supplies, a new uniform. We can't live on air." "I'll get support from nonprofits," Mary replied, resolute. "There are state programs for families like ours, and I can't keep pretending I have a normal life while my daughter is still missing." The decision became the final breaking point in their marriage. Daniel came home later, and eventually some nights not at all. Mary suspected there was another woman, but she no longer cared. Her world revolved around Emily. Anything that didn't directly help find her felt irrelevant. Now in his second year of middle school, Noah began showing signs of depression that worried his teachers. His grades dropped, and he stopped joining the extracurriculars he used to enjoy. The school's guidance counselor, Mr. Hernandez, asked Mary in to express his concern. "Your son needs urgent professional help," he said during the meeting. "Noah has mentioned more than once that sometimes he'd rather not exist. Those are warning signs we can't ignore." Mary heard the words, but her mind was elsewhere. That same day, she'd received a call from Albuquerque, where someone reported a 17-year-old girl working at a local market who might be Emily. She planned to travel that week to check it out. Noah's just going through normal adolescence, she answered distractedly. "Kids his age have mood swings. When we find Emily, everything will go back to normal at home." The counselor exchanged a look with the social worker present. They had seen this before and knew Noah was at real risk of severe psychological trouble without immediate care. "Mrs. Reyes, we understand how hard Emily's case is on your family," the social worker said gently. "But Noah is a minor in your care. He has a right to counseling, and we can help you access it through public health services." Mary promised to consider it, but had no intention of following through. In a mind warped by years of pain, any effort not focused on Emily felt wasted. Noah would have to learn to be strong the way she had. That afternoon, after the school meeting, she found Noah in the backyard with Mr. Harris. The elderly man was teaching him to fix an old radio, both completely absorbed in the task. For a moment, Mary felt a twinge of something, jealousy maybe, or regret. But the feeling vanished when her phone buzzed with another possible lead on Emily. Mr. Harris had noted Noah's steady decline in recent months. The boy had begun asking unsettling questions about life and death, and whether the missing mattered more than those still here. The old man had become the only adult truly attentive to the teen's emotional well-being. "Do you think my sister is dead, Mr. Harris?" Noah asked one afternoon as they worked together in the small workshop the old man had set up in his garage. Mr. Harris set down his tools and looked the boy in the eye. For years he had avoided that conversation, but he knew Noah needed an honest answer from someone he trusted. "I don't know, son," he said at last. "It's been many years, yes, but without certainty, your mom has the right to keep hoping. The problem is when hope keeps us from living in the present. Sometimes I think it'd be better to know she's dead." Noah whispered. "At least then we could mourn, bury her and move on. This uncertainty is killing my whole family." Mr. Harris understood. In 70 years he had learned that uncertainty can be more devastating than confirmed tragedy. When his wife died, he could say goodbye, grieve, and eventually learn to live with the absence. The Reyes family was trapped in an emotional limbo that allowed neither farewell nor forward motion. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic complicated everything. Travel restrictions kept Mary from chasing leads, plunging her into a deep depression. During lockdown, her obsession intensified. She spent up to 18 hours a day online, scouring social media, missing persons pages, and forums for families like hers. She lost so much weight that relatives began to worry about her health. Her older sister, Rocio, tried to intervene. "Mary, you have to eat," she begged on family video calls. "You're skin and bones and Noah needs you. You can't keep this up." "I'm not hungry," Mary replied, eyes fixed on the screen. "I'm checking a new missing persons site in New Mexico. I think I saw a photo that looks like Emily now. Daniel practically disappeared during the pandemic. He took a job at a mechanics shop that required him to stay on site during the week, coming home only on weekends. When he was home, he shut himself in his room and avoided Mary completely." Noah, now 16, developed a premature maturity that impressed everyone who knew him. He handled basic chores, stretched the little money Daniel left to buy groceries, and made sure his mother ate at least once a day. "Sometimes I feel like I'm the only adult in this house," he confided to Mr. Harris during one visit. Health restrictions limited their meetings, but Noah still went by whenever he could, keeping his distance yet clinging to the relationship that had become essential to his stability. Mr. Harris had aged considerably during the pandemic. At 71, he was high risk and had to isolate almost completely. Still, he found ways to be there for Noah, talking from his window or by phone. "You have incredible strength for your age," he told the boy. "But don't forget you have a right to be happy, to have your own dreams. Don't let your family's tragedy define your whole life." The year 2021 brought unexpected changes for the Reyes family. Noah turned 17 and entered his senior year of high school. Despite everything, he kept an excellent GPA, and several teachers urged him to think about college. "You have the potential for engineering or medicine," his chemistry teacher, Mrs. Martinez, told him during tutoring. "I know things are hard at home, but there are scholarships. Don't waste your talent." Noah had grown especially interested in psychology, likely shaped by years of watching raw human behavior in his own home. He began reading about trauma, grief, and dysfunctional family dynamics, trying to understand scientifically what he had lived through. Mary, however, showed no interest in his achievements. By 2021, she clearly suffered from an obsessive-compulsive pattern centered on finding Emily. Complex routines of scanning hundreds of profiles, calling organizations in multiple states, and corresponding with psychics and people claiming paranormal abilities. Her room had become a chaotic research hub, walls covered with maps, photos, clippings, and lists of phone numbers. She kept meticulous files on every lead from 13 years of searching, most of them dead ends. Daniel vanished from their lives entirely. In 2021, he stopped sending money and stopped coming home on weekends. Noah learned by chance, from one of his father's former co-workers, that Daniel had moved to San Diego with another woman and started a new family. The news didn't surprise him. In a way, he had been expecting it for years. "Are you going to tell your mom?" Mr. Harris asked when Noah shared what he'd heard. "I don't see the point," the boy replied with a maturity beyond his years. "She hasn't even noticed he hasn't been here for months. She's too busy chasing ghosts to see she's lost her husband." Mr. Harris saw how the boy had built an emotional armor against abandonment and neglect. The old man had come to think of Noah as the son he never had and worried deeply about the young man's future. Money became untenable. Without Daniel's income, Mary applied for state assistance and SNAP benefits, but the funds barely covered the most basic expenses. Noah had started working weekends at a neighborhood corner store to earn extra money. During that time, Mr. Harris made a decision that would change the family dynamic. He began inviting Noah to eat at his house regularly, saying he needed the company and that the boy helped with chores he could no longer manage at his age. "Come over every day after school," Mr. Harris suggested. "I can help with your homework, and I cook better than you do," he added with a smile that had been rare in Noah's life for years. Mr. Harris's home gradually became Noah's emotional refuge. The elderly man kept his late wife Hope's recipes, and every afternoon he made home-cooked meals that filled the small kitchen with comforting aromas Noah hadn't felt in his own house since childhood. After eating, they sat in the living room to watch TV or simply talk about soccer, about life, about Noah's plans for the future. "I never had children," Mr. Harris confessed one afternoon as they washed dishes together. "Hope and I tried for years, but it wasn't meant to be. Sometimes I think God's making it up to me now, letting me look after you." The words moved Noah deeply, a boy who had grown up feeling invisible and irrelevant in his own family. For the first time in years, someone made him feel valued for who he was, not as the brother of a missing girl or the son of parents broken by tragedy. In 2022, 14 years after Emily's disappearance, Mary seemed to spiral into a psychotic break. She began claiming she received telepathic messages from her daughter. Emily was showing her where to search. These revelations sent Mary out in the dead of night, chasing specific locations she said she'd seen in dreams. "She's completely lost it," Noah told Mr. Harris after Mary came home one night with torn clothes and cut hands, insisting Emily had guided her to a vacant lot where she'd find important clues. Mr. Harris had watched with growing concern as Mary's mind unraveled. Her erratic behavior, the nighttime wanderings, the whispered monologues to Emily's photographs, the late-night calls reporting sightings that were clearly hallucinations. "Your mom needs medical help now," he told Noah, "and you can't keep carrying all of this. You're only 18. You should be thinking about your future, not taking care of an adult who's lost touch with reality." Noah had reached the same conclusion but felt trapped between family loyalty and his own survival. He'd been accepted to Arizona State University to study psychology, but he didn't know how he could afford it, or how he could leave his mother in her condition. "If I go to school, who's going to take care of her?" he asked during one of their evening talks. "She can't be alone, but I can't give up my whole life for someone who barely acknowledges I exist." Mr. Harris thought carefully before answering. Over the years, he'd developed a genuine paternal affection for Noah, and had decided the young man deserved a chance to build a life away from the trauma that had defined him. "What if I took responsibility for her?" he finally proposed. "I've been their neighbor for over 15 years. I know the situation and I have the time. You could study knowing someone's looking after her." The offer stunned Noah. Mr. Harris was 73 with his own health issues. Asking him to care for a woman in severe psychiatric distress seemed too much. "I can't ask you to do that," Noah said. "You've already done so much for me. And my mom can be unpredictable, sometimes aggressive. It wouldn't be fair." "Noah," Mr. Harris replied firmly, "all these years you've sacrificed for your family. You've been more of an adult than your parents, caring for your mother after your father left, keeping top grades in the middle of chaos. It's time someone took care of you." They talked for hours. Mr. Harris explained he'd thought this through and truly wanted to help. He had no family of his own. His pension covered a modest life, and helping Noah build a future felt like the best use of his remaining years. "Besides," he added with a sad smile, "taking care of Mary would make me feel useful. At my age, you need to feel you can still do some good in the world." In the weeks that followed, Mr. Harris gradually put his plan into action. He visited Mary more often, bringing homemade meals and keeping her company in the afternoons. Mary, almost completely detached from reality, accepted his presence without question, especially because Mr. Harris never directly challenged her delusions about Emily's messages. "Mr. Harris understands," Mary told Noah during one of her rare lucid moments. "He believes Emily sends me signs, not like you, who think I'm crazy." Noah watched with mixed feelings. He was relieved someone else was sharing the burden of caring for his mother. But it hurt to see Mary accept a stranger's support more easily than her own son's. In January 2023, Noah started college in psychology. Mr. Harris kept his promise and practically moved into the Reyes home, maintaining his own place but spending most of his time caring for Mary. The arrangement worked better than expected. The elderly man had the patience and life experience to manage Mary's psychotic episodes, and she grew emotionally dependent on him in a way that kept her more stable. College became Noah's first taste of a normal life. For the first time in years, he could focus on something other than the family tragedy. Classmates saw him as serious and mature, unusually dedicated to his studies, though he rarely spoke about his personal life. In trauma psychology lectures, Noah began to understand his home scientifically. Complicated grief, adjustment disorders, dysfunctional family systems. He finally had names for the behaviors he'd watched for years. Unresolved loss can manifest in many ways, his professor explained during a class on ambiguous loss. Without definitive closure, as in disappearances, families can get trapped in patterns that block healthy mourning. Noah took careful notes, feeling each concept clarify his own story. During breaks, he called Mr. Harris, checking on his mom and sharing what he was learning. "I knew there was a name for what Mom has," he said one afternoon. "It's called persistent complicated grief. It's common when there's no resolution." Mr. Harris listened with interest, though he stayed practical. Over those months, he developed routines for Mary. Sitting with her while she searched online but limiting screen time to certain hours, cooking nutritious meals to fight her malnourishment, coaxing her into regular baths and basic hygiene. "Your son is studying to understand what happened to us all," he would tell Mary as they spent afternoons paging through old photos of Emily. "He's smart. You should be proud." But Mary had almost completely disconnected from any reality not tied to Emily. Noah no longer existed to her as a son, only insofar as he could contribute to the search. In the second half of 2023, Mr. Harris began having health problems he initially tried to hide. He developed a persistent cough and lost a troubling amount of weight. When he finally agreed to see a doctor after Noah's urging, the results were grim, a tumor in his lungs requiring immediate treatment. "Don't tell your mother yet," he asked Noah after the diagnosis. "She's too unstable to handle another loss. Let's see what the oncologist says first." Noah felt overwhelmed. Mr. Harris had become the only stable father figure in his life, and the thought of losing him filled him with panic. If Mr. Harris couldn't keep caring for Mary, Noah would have to drop out to take over again. "Easy, son," Mr. Harris said, noticing his anxiety. "The doctors say treatment could give me a few more years. We'll fight this battle like we fought the others." In the months that followed, Mr. Harris underwent chemotherapy while continuing to care for Mary. The treatments weakened him, but he managed to maintain their routines, increasingly relying on Noah's help on weekends. Mary didn't notice Mr. Harris's decline until it was undeniable. Her grip on reality had shrunk, so much she only registered changes when they disrupted her obsessive rituals about Emily. "Why? Does Mr. Harris look thin?" she asked one afternoon, as if suddenly seeing what had been there for months. "He's a little sick," Noah answered carefully. "But he's taking care of himself." By December 2023, 15 years after Emily vanished, the situation had reached a breaking point. Mr. Harris grew weaker from cancer. Noah was in his second year of college. Mary developed new obsessions, wandering out all night to pursue leads from her hallucinations. One December night, Mary didn't come home. Too frail to go after her, Mr. Harris called Noah in a panic. The young man left his end-of-semester exams and rushed back to organize a search. "She left yesterday afternoon saying she'd received a strong sign from Emily," Mr. Harris explained when Noah arrived. "I told her to wait for you, but she ran toward downtown." Noah spent the night crisscrossing Phoenix, checking the places his mother usually hunted for clues. At dawn, he found her at the city cemetery, asleep on the grave of an unknown child, whispering to someone who wasn't there. "Look, Noah, Emily brought me here," Mary said when he woke her. "She's telling me something important. But I need more time to understand the message." Noah helped his mother up and brought her home, where Mr. Harris waited with a hot breakfast and a look of profound relief. That morning, the old man made a decision he had postponed for months. "Noah, I need to tell you something," he said when Mary finally fell asleep. "I've been thinking a lot during these months of illness, and I think it's time to do something I should have done years ago." Mr. Harris walked to an old dresser in his bedroom and pulled out a shoebox that had been closed for decades. With trembling hands, he opened it and took out several objects: a small doll, a few pink ribbons, a black patent shoe, and photographs that had clearly been taken in secret. Noah stared without understanding at first. Then recognition crept in. The doll had been one of Emily's favorites. The pink ribbons were the ones his mother had tied into her braids the morning she vanished, and the black shoe matched the pair Emily had worn that day. "Mr. Harris," Noah whispered, his voice shaking. "What is this?" The old man sank onto his bed with the box on his knees and looked at Noah with eyes full of tears, an expression that mixed guilt, relief, and terror. "It's time you knew the truth, son," Mr. Harris said hoarsely. "Emily never disappeared. All these years she's been in my house." Noah's world collapsed in an instant. The words rang in his ears, as if spoken from very far away, and the air in the room turned unbreathable. He grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling as his mind tried to process what he'd just heard. "What are you saying?" he muttered, clinging to the hope he had misunderstood. Mr. Harris stood slowly, bracing himself on his cane, and walked to the window that looked out over his backyard. His breathing was labored from the cancer, but his voice steadied, as if he'd rehearsed this confession for years. "That May morning, when your mother was hanging laundry, Emily came up to the wall between our yards," he began without turning. "She was always curious. She asked me about the plants in my garden, about my late wife. That day she asked to see the flowers I'd planted near the fence." Noah's legs trembled. He sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the doll that had belonged to his sister 15 years earlier. "I opened the gate so she could come see the flowers," Mr. Harris went on. "I had red camellias in full bloom. Emily was fascinated, touching them gently, asking how they grew. Then I—" His voice broke. He leaned against the window and shut his eyes as if the memory hurt physically. "I'd been living alone for 3 years since Hope died. 3 years without laughter in my house, without conversation, without feeling I mattered to anyone. When I saw Emily there, so beautiful, so full of life, so much like the daughter Hope and I never had." Noah shot to his feet, fists clenched. "What did you do to my sister?" he shouted in a voice he didn't recognize as his own. "I didn't hurt her," Mr. Harris said quickly, turning toward Noah with tears running down his creased cheeks. "I never laid a hand on her, never touched her inappropriately. I only wanted her to stay with me. I told her I'd baked special cookies in the kitchen, that we could play together if she wanted. She said yes because she knew me, because she trusted me. Where is she?" Noah rasped. Mr. Harris pointed to a door Noah had seen 1,000 times over years of visits, a door that had always been locked. "In the basement," he whispered. "I built a special room for her with everything a little girl might need: toys, books, a comfortable bed, a TV. I've taken care of her all these years." Noah moved toward the door, but Mr. Harris grabbed his arm with surprising strength for a man in his condition. "Wait," he said. "You need to understand how this happened. You need to know I never meant to hurt your family. At first I thought I'd keep her just a few days, then find a way to bring her back without anyone realizing what I'd done. You kidnapped my sister," Noah said, wrenching free. "You let my parents lose their minds searching for her for 15 years. You let my family destroy itself while you pretended to be our friend and comforted us." "Yes," Mr. Harris admitted, sinking back onto the bed in total defeat. "All of that is true. But after the first weeks, Emily had gotten used to being with me. I bought her new clothes, toys, candy. She thought it was a game, that you all knew where she was. I told her parents were very busy working, but they would visit soon." Noah felt sick imagining his 6-year-old sister waiting for days, weeks, months for her parents to come to the neighbor's basement. "And then what happened?" he asked, unsure he wanted the answer. "After a few months, When Emily asked for you more insistently, I told her there had been an accident, that her parents had died, but that I would take care of her forever, Mr. Harris confessed. She cried for weeks, but eventually she accepted me as her new family. Horror settled fully into Noah's mind. His sister had grown up believing her parents were dead, while his parents had torn themselves apart searching for her. Mr. Harris had manipulated a 6-year-old into accepting captivity as normal, then spent years consoling the desperate parents as he held their child prisoner. Is she alive? Noah asked, barely audible. Yes, Mr. Harris said. She's alive, she's healthy, and she's in that room. She's 21 now, Noah. She's become a bright, beautiful woman. I taught her to read, to write, to do math. We watch TV together, we cook together. She thinks I'm her grandfather, the man who raised her after she lost her family. Noah couldn't hold back any longer. He went to the basement door and tried the knob, but it was locked. Give me the keys, he demanded. Mr. Harris hesitated, glancing between Noah and the door. At last he pulled a key ring from his pocket and handed it over with trembling hands. Noah, he said before the young man opened the door, you need to be careful. To her, I'm the only family she knows. If she learns the truth too abruptly, it could be traumatic. She doesn't know you exist. She doesn't remember much of her life before. Noah ignored the warning and unlocked the door. Behind it, a staircase led down to a basement carefully outfitted as a full room. Carpet on the floor, brightly painted walls, a double bed, a desk, shelves crammed with books, a TV, even a small refrigerator. At the bottom of the stairs, seated in a chair with a book in her hands, was his sister. Emily had grown exactly as Mary had imagined through all those years. She was a young woman of 21, with the same glossy black hair she'd had as a child, now down to her shoulders. Her eyes were still wide and expressive, but the childlike joy Noah remembered was gone. She wore simple, clean clothes, a pair of jeans and a white blouse that Mr. Harris had clearly bought. When she heard footsteps on the stairs, Emily looked up and smiled with the expectation of seeing a familiar face. Hi, Grandpa, she said softly. Is it time for lunch? Then she saw Noah, frozen halfway down the steps. Her expression shifted to confusion and a flicker of fear. Who is he, Grandpa? Emily asked, standing and backing toward the far corner of the room. Noah couldn't answer. He saw his sister, the 6-year-old he remembered, now an adult who didn't recognize him and called Grandpa the man who had taken her. The moment was so surreal his mind refused to fully register it. Mr. Harris descended slowly, steadying himself against the wall. Emily, my girl, he said gently. This is my nephew, Noah. He's come to visit us. Emily studied Noah with curiosity, but no hint of recognition. To her, he was a stranger, and her instinct was to keep her distance until the situation made sense. Nice to meet you, she said politely, with the careful manners Mr. Harris had instilled over years together. Noah finally managed to speak, though his voice sounded strange and far away. Emily, he whispered, I'm your brother. Confusion deepened on Emily's face. She glanced between Noah and Mr. Harris, searching for an explanation that fit her world, this underground room, the company of the old man she knew as her grandfather. Grandpa, she said to Mr. Harris, I don't understand. You told me my family died in an accident when I was little. This man says he's my brother. Mr. Harris closed his eyes, knowing the moment he had feared for 15 years had finally arrived. There was no way to prop up the lies he'd built to justify what he'd done. Emily, he began, voice breaking, there are things you need to know about your real family. The truth came out over hours, a devastating process that dismantled 15 years of careful fabrication. With the resignation of a man who knew his time was short, Mr. Harris began tearing down his lies. Noah sat on the stairs watching his adult sister absorb information that would redefine her entire reality. Your family never died in an accident, Mr. Harris admitted, sitting on the bed where Emily had slept for more than 5,000 nights. Your parents, your little brother, they've lived next door all these years. I lied, because I wanted you to be my family. Emily pressed her hands to her head, as if she could stop the flood of information. For years she had built her identity around being an orphan cared for by a loving grandfather. Now she learned she had been the victim of a calculated abduction, that a whole family had searched for her, and that the man she trusted completely had been her captor. I don't understand, she kept repeating. This can't be true. You cared for me, taught me things, bought me clothes. Grandfathers take care of their granddaughters. They don't kidnap them. Noah moved toward his sister, slow and careful, like approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. Emily, he said softly, I know this is impossible to take in, but I really am your brother. I was 4 when you disappeared. I'm 19 now. I've grown up my whole life wondering where you were. Noah, Emily whispered, and for the first time since the conversation began, something like a memory crossed her face. Little Noah. It was the first spark of recognition. Hope and pain surged through Noah as he realized some fragment of his sister's memory had survived years of manipulation. Yes, he said, tears in his eyes. Little Noah, your younger brother. You used to tell me bedtime stories. You taught me how to tie my shoes. You stood up for me when the older kids made fun of me. Emily sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the flood of information and the conflicting emotions rising inside her. Part of her clung to the reality she'd known for 15 years. Another part began to remember fragments of an earlier life, buried beneath layers of lies and manipulation. If you're really my family, she asked in a trembling voice, where have you been all these years? Why didn't you come for me? Noah looked at Mr. Harris with a mixture of pain and rage before he answered. We did look for you, Emily. We never stopped. Mom went out of her mind searching. Dad drank himself numb and finally left because he couldn't stand the pain. I grew up invisible in my own house because every ounce of energy went to finding you. We plastered thousands of flyers, checked every corner of Phoenix, went on TV shows. All this time you were 15 feet from our home. The magnitude of the tragedy settled over Emily. She hadn't only been kidnapped, her disappearance had shattered her family. Her parents had lived 15 years of hell. Her little brother had grown up in emotional chaos, and it had all happened while she lived a few yards away, convinced she was an orphan cared for by a kind grandfather. My parents? She asked, voice breaking. Where are my parents now? Noah exchanged a look with Mr. Harris before answering. He knew he had to explain their mother's devastated mental state and Daniel's abandonment, but didn't know how to do it without causing more harm. Dad left a few years ago, he began carefully. He couldn't handle losing you and moved to another city with someone else. But Mom never stopped searching. She's next door right now. Emily, you need to know these years have taken a heavy toll. Her mind isn't well. Emily stood and paced across the basement room, trying to process everything. Her movements were nervous, like someone feeling claustrophobia for the first time after realizing she'd been confined. Can I see her? She asked at last. Can I see my mom? Mr. Harris, who had stayed silent during the siblings' conversation, finally spoke in a weak voice. Emily, my girl, there's something else you need to know before you see your mother. I'm very sick. I have cancer, and the doctors say I have only a few months. That's why I decided to tell the truth now. I can't leave this world with this secret. The confession added another layer of emotional complexity to an already overwhelming situation. Emily realized she wasn't just losing the only reality she'd known as an adult. She was also losing the one constant person in her life for 15 years. Are you going to die? She asked through tears. In that question, Noah saw the 6-year-old who had been taken so long ago. Yes, my girl, Mr. Harris said softly. But now you can go back to your real family. Noah and your mother will take care of you. They'll love you. You'll be able to live a real life outside this basement. Emily looked around the room that had been her world for 15 years. She had grown up within those walls, learned to read in that bed, watched thousands of hours of television in that small space. It was everything she knew, and though she now understood it had been her prison, it had also been her home. I don't know how to be part of a family, she confessed. I don't know how to live out there. This room is all I know of the world. Noah stepped close and for the first time in 15 years was able to hug his sister. Emily tensed at first, then relaxed into his arms, letting the tears she'd been holding back finally come. You'll learn, Noah whispered. I'll help. We'll do this together, step by step. The meeting with Mary had to be carefully planned. Noah went upstairs first to prepare their mother, though he knew that in her condition it would be hard for her to process anything rationally. He found Mary in her room, surrounded by maps and photos, talking to herself as she circled different areas of Phoenix where she believed she might find clues to Emily. Mom, Noah said gently, I need you to sit down. I have something very important to tell you. Mary looked up from her maps, irritated. For years she had developed an aversion to interruptions while working on Emily's case. "What do you want, Noah?" "I'm busy. Last night I received a very strong sign from Emily, and I'm trying to figure out where she needs me to look." "Mom, I found Emily," Noah said plainly, knowing there was no soft way to say it. Mary went utterly still. For a few seconds nothing registered. Then she slowly dropped the red marker from her hand. "What did you say?" she whispered. "Emily is alive, Mom. She's here in Mr. Harris's house. She's been there all these 15 years. Mary's reaction was immediate and explosive. She sprang to her feet, scattered papers and maps across the floor, and began to shout with a mixture of joy, hysteria, and rage. "I knew it. I knew she was alive. I knew the signs were real," she cried, running around the room. "Where is she? Where's my girl?" Noah tried to calm her, but Mary had already bolted toward Mr. Harris's house. He followed, afraid the encounter would traumatize both his mother and his sister. When Mary burst in and saw Emily slowly climbing the basement steps, time seemed to stop. Mother and daughter stared at each other from opposite ends of the room, recognizing and not recognizing at the same time. Mary saw her 6-year-old transformed into a 21-year-old woman. Emily saw a gaunt, prematurely aged woman who was supposed to be her mother but looked like a stranger. "Mommy?" Emily asked in a childlike voice. The word shattered Mary's defenses. She approached slowly, as if afraid Emily would vanish like a hallucination if she moved too fast. When she finally touched her daughter's face, both began to cry with a force that had built for 15 years. "My baby, my girl, my love," Mary sobbed. "I've searched for you every day for 15 years. I never stopped believing you were alive." Mr. Harris, watching from a corner, slumped into a chair. Seeing the simultaneous pain and joy of the reunion showed him the true scale of what he had done. For years he had rationalized his actions, telling himself he cared well for Emily, that she was happy. Now he saw he had stolen 15 years of family life, 15 years of a mother's embrace, 15 years of shared growth. The days that followed were chaotic. Emily moved back into her family's house, but the transition was wrenching. After so long in a small, controlled space, the outside world overwhelmed her. Traffic noise, neighbors' conversations, even natural sunlight made her anxious and disoriented. Noah took a temporary leave from college to help with the transition. Emily needed constant support to adapt to life outside the basement. And though Mary was ecstatic to have her daughter back, she still struggled with the mental health problems that years of obsessive searching had carved into her. "I don't know how to be a mother to an adult daughter," Mary confessed to Noah one night. "I lost a 6-year-old and got back a 21-year-old woman. I wasn't there for her first day of school, her first heartbreak, the basic lessons of life. How do we make up 15 lost years?" Noah had no easy answers. The family was physically reunited, but emotionally they were still strangers, trying to rebuild bonds that had been brutally severed. Emily, for her part, wrestled with conflicted feelings about Mr. Harris. Rationally, she knew he had been her captor, but emotionally, he was the only father figure she remembered. When the old man was hospitalized as his cancer worsened, Emily insisted on visiting him despite Noah's objections. "I know what he did was wrong," she told her brother. "But for 15 years, he was the only person who took care of me. I can't erase those feelings just because I know the truth now." The story reached the media after Noah reported the case to authorities. Commander Ruiz, who had reopened the investigation years before, could hardly believe how the most infamous case of his career had resolved. "In 30 years in law enforcement, I've never seen anything like this," he said at a press conference. "The victim was literally next door to her family for 15 years while we searched across the country." National outlets swarmed the story. The case that shocked Arizona became a lead headline nationwide. Emily Reyes's story became a symbol of hope for thousands of families with missing children. But it also raised disturbing questions about how an abduction could go unnoticed for so long in a close-knit community. Robert Harris died in the hospital 3 weeks after his confession, never formally charged due to his terminal condition. In his final days, he dictated a letter to the Reyes family, begging forgiveness and saying he had acted out of loneliness and despair, not malice. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," the letter read, "but I want you to know that all these years I tried to be a good caretaker to Emily. I never harmed her physically, never abused her. I loved her as if she were my own granddaughter. though that does not excuse what I did to your family. The funeral was strange and painful. Emily insisted on attending, weeping for the man who had been her captor and also her only companion during the most formative years of her life. Noah and Mary went too, not out of affection for Mr. Harris, but to support Emily in her complicated grief. 6 months after the reunion, the Reyes family remained in intensive family therapy. Emily was slowly adapting to the outside world, enrolling in adult education classes to earn her high school equivalency. Noah had returned to college, studying remotely so he could stay close during the long healing process. Mary had begun psychiatric treatment and medication for anxiety and obsessive-compulsive symptoms. For the first time in 15 years, she had real hope instead of constant despair, though the road would be long. This family has endured a trauma few can comprehend, explained their therapist, Dr. Patricia Salinas. They've lost 15 years of ordinary life and now must learn to be a family from scratch. But they have something many families of missing children never get: a second chance. House number 847 on Hidalgo Street in the San Juan neighborhood was no longer the same. Emily's room, preserved like a shrine for 15 years, was finally occupied again. Now the room of a grown woman learning to live free after spending half her life in captivity. Emily's case changed missing persons protocols in Arizona. Authorities implemented new strategies: more exhaustive checks of properties near the disappearance site, repeated neighbor interviews over time, and tighter follow-up on unresolved cases. For thousands of American families living the tragedy of a missing child, the Reyes story became an ambivalent symbol. On one hand, it proved that a loved one could be recovered after years. On the other, it showed how lost time can never truly be reclaimed, and how the trauma of abduction extends far beyond the direct victim. Now 22, Emily began keeping a journal as part of therapy, not to publish but to process. In its pages, she reflected on the 15 lost years, the difficulty of reconciling the love she felt for Mr. Harris with the knowledge that he was her captor, and the challenge of building a relationship with a mother who had changed drastically during her absence. "Sometimes I wonder who I would have been if I had never been taken," she wrote in one entry. "Maybe I would have gone to college, dated, traveled. But it doesn't help to think about a life that never happened. I can only build with what I have now, a family that loves me, and a second chance at living." Emily Reyes's story shocked the country not just for the extraordinary reunion, but for the deep questions it posed about love, manipulation, forgiveness, and human resilience. 5 years after the reunion, the Reyes family was still healing, still learning how to be a family, still proving that even after the most devastating tragedies, hope and love can find a way to rebuild what seemed lost forever.